In just 39 seconds, one of Britain's most beloved actors completely loses his patience with Lorraine Kelly, unleashing a fiery takedown that left the studio in absolute shock. What started as a simple conversation about his latest film quickly spiraled into one of the most heated confrontations ever broadcast on morning television, with Colin Firth eventually storming off the set after calling out the host's relentless line of questioning. Before we dive into this explosive story, make sure you subscribe to our channel for daily videos exposing Britain's darkest scandals. You won't want to miss what happens next. Last night's episode of Lorraine began like any other morning show appearance. Colin Firth walked onto the brightly lit set, waving to the audience with that familiar, reserved smile he's known for. He settled into the cream-colored sofa across from Lorraine Kelly, who greeted him with her trademark cheerfulness, her voice bright and welcoming as always. "Colin, wonderful to have you here," Lorraine said, beaming at him. "You look absolutely fantastic. How are you feeling today?" "I'm well, thank you," Colin replied, his voice polite but measured. "It's good to be here." Lorraine leaned forward slightly, her hands clasped together. "Now, you're here to talk about your new film, which I have to say looks absolutely brilliant. But before we get into that, I think everyone wants to know what's been going on in your personal life. You've been quite private lately, haven't you?" Colin's expression didn't change, but there was a subtle shift in his posture. "Well, I prefer to keep my private life private, as you know. I'm here to discuss the film." Of course, Lorraine said quickly, though her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "But you have to understand, people are curious. They care about you. They want to know how you're doing after everything that's happened." "Everything that's happened?" Colin repeated, his brow furrowing slightly. "I'm not sure what you're referring to." Lorraine laughed, a bright tinkling sound that seemed to fill the studio. "Oh, come on now, Colin, don't be coy. We've all read the stories. The tabloids have been absolutely full of speculation about your marriage, your family situation. Surely you can give us something?" Colin's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Lorraine, with respect, I came here to discuss my work. My family is off limits." "But, your fans want to know," Lorraine pressed, her tone still light and friendly, as if she wasn't crossing a line. "They've invested so much in you over the years. Don't you think they deserve to know what's really going on?" "No," Colin said flatly. "I don't think they deserve access to every aspect of my personal life. That's not how this works." The studio audience was quiet now, sensing the shift in energy. Lorraine's smile became a bit more fixed, a bit more forced. "You're being awfully defensive, Colin. I'm just asking simple questions that any journalist would ask." "Are you?" Colin asked, his voice cool. "Because it seems to me you're asking invasive questions about my private life under the guise of journalism." Lorraine sat back, her expression shifting to something resembling hurt. "I'm trying to have a conversation with you. This is what we do on morning television. We chat, we connect with our guests. I thought you understood that." "I understand perfectly," Colin replied. "I understand that you're trying to get me to comment on rumors and speculation for the sake of ratings." "That's not fair," Lorraine said, her voice rising slightly. "I've been in this business for decades, Colin. I know how to conduct an interview, and part of that is asking about the person, not just their work. People want the full picture." "Then let me paint you the full picture," Colin said, his tone sharp now. "I'm an actor. I make films. That's what I do professionally. Everything else is my business and my family's business. Not yours, not the tabloids, and certainly not the viewers at home." Lorraine's face flushed slightly. "Well, that's rather rude, isn't it? These people are watching because they admire you. They're interested in your life. Being interested doesn't entitle them to information I don't want to share," Colin shot back. "And you, as a professional, should respect those boundaries instead of pushing and pushing." "I'm not pushing," Lorraine insisted, though her voice was tighter now. "I'm doing my job. If you didn't want to be asked questions, perhaps you shouldn't have come on a talk show." Colin stared at her for a long moment. "A talk show is meant to be a conversation, Lorraine, not an interrogation. There's a difference." "An interrogation?" Lorraine repeated, her voice going up an octave. "You think I'm interrogating you? I'm being perfectly pleasant. You're the one who's being difficult." "I'm being difficult because I'm setting boundaries," Colin asked, his voice incredulous. Do you hear yourself? The tension in the studio was thick now, palpable. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every moment of the exchange. Lorraine shifted in her seat, clearly trying to regain control of the conversation. Let's just move on, shall we? She said, her tone attempting brightness but landing somewhere closer to brittle. Tell us about the film. What drew you to this particular role? Colin took a breath, seemingly trying to compose himself. The script was exceptional. The director's vision was clear and compelling. It's a story about a man grappling with his past mistakes and trying to make amends. I found that deeply resonant. Interesting, Lorraine said, nodding. And is there anything in your own life that helped you connect with that theme? Any past mistakes you're trying to make amends for? Colin's eyes widened slightly. Are you serious right now? What? Lorraine asked, all innocence. It's a perfectly reasonable question. Actors often draw from their own experiences. You literally just agreed to move on from personal questions, Colin said, his voice low and controlled. That lasted all of 30 seconds. This is about the film, Lorraine protested. About your process as an actor. No, it's not, Colin said firmly. It's another attempt to get me to open up about my personal life by framing it as a question about acting. I'm not stupid, Lorraine. Lorraine's pleasant expression cracked completely. I never said you were stupid. But I do think you're being unnecessarily hostile. This is meant to be a friendly chat. Friendly? Colin repeated. There's nothing friendly about repeatedly disrespecting someone's clearly stated boundaries. Oh, for goodness sake, Lorraine said, throwing up her hands. You celebrities are all the same. You want the fame and the money and the adoration. But the moment someone asks you a real question, you hide behind boundaries and privacy. Colin's expression hardened. Excuse me? You heard me, Lorraine said, her voice sharp now. You can't have it both ways. You can't court public attention when it suits you, and then act all precious when people are actually interested in your life. I didn't court anything, Colin said, his voice rising for the first time. I'm an actor. I act in films. That's my job. The rest of this, the talk shows, the publicity, it's all part of promoting the work. But that doesn't mean I've sold my soul. That doesn't mean every part of my life is up for public consumption. Then why are you here? Lorraine demanded. If you don't want to engage with the public, why bother showing up at all? I'm here to discuss my film, Colin said through gritted teeth. How many times do I need to say that? And I'm trying to make this interesting for the viewers, Lorraine snapped. Nobody wants to sit through 10 minutes of you talking about camera angles and lighting. They want to connect with you as a person. Then maybe you should try asking better questions, Colin shot back. Questions that actually relate to the craft, to the story we're telling, to something of substance. Instead of just digging for gossip like every other tabloid journalist. Lorraine's face went red. Don't you dare compare me to tabloid journalists. I've won awards for my broadcasting. I've interviewed prime ministers, celebrities, royalty. I know what I'm doing. Do you? Colin asked coldly. Because from where I'm sitting, you're more interested in getting sound bites than having an actual conversation. This is unbelievable, Lorraine said, shaking her head. I invite you onto my show. I'm nothing but welcoming and warm. And this is how you treat me? With contempt and condescension? You're playing the victim now? Colin asked, his voice incredulous. You've spent the last 10 minutes trying to bully me into discussing things I explicitly said I wouldn't discuss, and now you're acting like I'm the one being unreasonable. I'm not bullying anyone, Lorraine said, her voice rising. I'm conducting an interview. If you can't handle basic questions, maybe you're in the wrong profession. Colin laughed, but there was no humor in it. Basic questions? Is that what you call prying into someone's marriage and family life? Basic questions? Everyone else manages to answer them, Lorraine said. But you're too good for that, aren't you? Too refined. Too proper. Well, let me tell you something, Colin. Your aloofness doesn't make you sophisticated. It makes you difficult to work with. Difficult to work with? Colin repeated. I came here prepared to have a professional conversation. You're the one who's made this difficult by refusing to respect simple boundaries. Boundaries, 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 Lorraine said mockingly. That's all you people ever talk about. What about my boundaries? What about the fact that I have a show to run, viewers to entertain, and you're sitting there being about as engaging as a brick wall? Colin stood up abruptly, his microphone still clipped to his collar. That's it. I'm done. Oh, sit down, Lorraine said dismissively. Don't be so dramatic. Dramatic? Colin said, his voice sharp. You want dramatic? How about this? You're a bully. You use your platform to push people into uncomfortable positions for entertainment, and when they push back, you play the victim. You act like you're entitled to information you have no right to simply because you have a television show. Lorraine's mouth fell open. How dare you? How absolutely dare you come on my show and speak to me like that? How dare I? Colin said, his voice getting louder. How dare you treat your guests like performing monkeys? You don't want a conversation, Lorraine. You want a confession. You want drama. You want me to break down and give you something you can use for promos and social media clips. That's not true, Lorraine protested, but her voice wavered. Isn't it? Colin challenged. Then why have you asked me about my personal life no fewer than 6 times in the space of 15 minutes, despite me making it clear each time that I wouldn't discuss it? Why do you keep circling back, rephrasing the same invasive questions, hoping I'll slip up? I'm trying to have a human conversation, Lorraine said. But she sounded less certain now. No, you're not, Colin said firmly. You're trying to exploit me for content, and I won't be a part of it. This is absurd, Lorraine said, standing up now as well. You're being completely unreasonable. This is how television works. This is how interviews work. Maybe that's the problem, Colin said. Maybe we've normalized this kind of behavior to the point where you genuinely believe you're in the right. But you're not, Lorraine. You're absolutely not. Get off my set, Lorraine said suddenly, her voice cold. If you're not going to participate properly, then leave. Gladly, Colin said, reaching for his microphone pack. I should have walked out the moment you started this nonsense. Nonsense, Lorraine repeated. I'm trying to do my job, and you're throwing a tantrum because you don't like the questions. A tantrum? Colin said, his voice dangerously quiet. I've been nothing but clear and direct with you. I've explained my position multiple times. The only person having a tantrum here is you, because for once, someone isn't playing along with your manipulative little games. The studio had gone completely silent. The crew stood frozen, unsure whether to stop filming or keep the cameras rolling. The audience seemed to be holding their collective breath. Manipulative? Lorraine's voice cracked slightly. You come on my show, you insult me, you refuse to answer questions, and I'm the manipulative one? Yes, Colin said simply. Because you're trying to gaslight me into thinking I'm the problem when you're the one who's been pushing boundaries from the very start. You're trying to make me feel guilty for having the audacity to say no to you. I'm not trying to make you feel anything, Lorraine said, but her hands were shaking now. I'm just trying to understand why you're being so hostile. I'm hostile because you're being disrespectful, Colin said. It's that simple. You can dress it up as friendliness, as curiosity, as doing your job, but at the end of the day, you're pushing someone to discuss things they don't want to discuss. That's disrespectful. Everyone discusses their personal lives, Lorraine said weakly. It's part of being in the public eye. No, it's not, Colin countered. Being in the public eye means your work is public. It doesn't mean your entire life is public property. And the fact that you can't understand that distinction is genuinely troubling. Fine, Lorraine said, her voice brittle. If that's how you feel, then leave. Go on. Walk out. Show everyone what a difficult, pretentious actor you are. Difficult, Colin said, shaking his head. I'm setting boundaries. That's not difficult. That's healthy. And if you think standing up for myself makes me pretentious, then that says far more about you than it does about me. Oh, spare me the sanctimonious lecture, Lorraine snapped. You're not some martyr standing up for privacy rights. You're just being awkward because you don't like being asked normal questions. They're not normal questions, Colin said, his voice exhausted now. They're invasive. They're inappropriate. And you know it. You absolutely know it. But you don't care because you've got a show to fill and ratings to chase. That's my job, Lorraine said defensively. What do you want me to do? Sit here and let you talk about lighting techniques for 20 minutes? Yes, Colin said, throwing up his hands. If that's what I'm here to discuss, then yes, that's exactly what you should do. You invited me here to promote a film. Let me promote the damn film. The film is boring, Lorraine said bluntly. Your personal life is interesting. That's just the reality of television. Colin stared at her, his expression a mixture of disbelief and disappointment. The film is boring? The film I've spent months working on, that dozens of talented people poured their hearts into, is boring? Not the film itself, Lorraine backpedaled. But just talking about it, without any personal context, without any real emotion or connection, yes, that's boring. Then you're not doing your job very well, Colin said coldly. A good interviewer can make any subject interesting. They ask thoughtful questions. They listen to the answers. They build a conversation. They don't just fish for gossip and call it journalism. Don't you dare tell me how to do my job, Lorraine said, her voice sharp again. I've been doing this since before you were a household name, and yet you still haven't learned the basic principle of respect, Colin said. Experience doesn't mean much if you haven't learned anything from it. That's it, Lorraine said, her voice trembling with anger. Get off my set. Now. I don't have to stand here and be insulted by you. You're right, Colin said, already unclipping his microphone. You don't. Just like I don't have to stand here and be interrogated about my private life. Funny how boundaries work both ways. You're being ridiculous, Lorraine said. But her voice was losing its strength. Am I? Colin asked. Or am I just the first person in a while who's actually called you out on this behavior? How many other guests have sat there uncomfortably, answering questions they didn't want to answer because they were too polite to say no, too worried about seeming difficult? Lorraine didn't answer. Her lips pressed into a thin line. That's what I thought, Colin said quietly. Well, I'm not going to be one of them. I'm not going to smile and nod and pretend this is okay when it's not. Fine, Lorraine said, her voice barely above a whisper now. Leave then. I will, Colin said, handing his microphone pack to a nearby crew member. And for what it's worth, I hope you think about this, about how you treat people, about whether ratings are really worth making your guests feel uncomfortable and invaded. Get out, Lorraine said. But there was no force behind it anymore. Colin nodded once, then turned and walked toward the studio exit. The cameras followed him as he crossed the set, his posture straight, his expression calm, despite the storm that had just erupted. Behind him, Lorraine stood frozen, her usual composure completely shattered. As Colin reached the door, he paused and looked back one last time. You asked what I've learned from playing this role, he said, his voice carrying across the silent studio. I've learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who don't respect you, even when it's difficult, even when it might cost you something. With that, he pushed through the door and disappeared from view, leaving Lorraine standing alone on the set, the studio audience sitting in stunned silence, and the cameras still rolling on what would become one of the most talked-about moments in morning television history. Lorraine stood there for several more seconds, her face pale, her hands still trembling. Finally, she turned to the cameras, opened her mouth, as if to say something, then closed it again. She looked lost, uncertain, nothing like the confident host who had started the interview just minutes before. We'll be right back, she finally managed to say, her voice hoarse. After a quick break, the studio lights dimmed as they cut to commercial, but the damage was done. In just under 15 minutes, what should have been a simple promotional interview had exploded into a full-scale confrontation that exposed the ugly side of celebrity journalism. Colin Firth had walked off the set, and Lorraine Kelly was left to pick up the pieces of her reputation, live on air, with no one to blame but herself.